Sometimes that's people's perception out of that kind of thing, but I don't think happy-go-lucky. I think optimist, positive to a fault, really looking on the bright side to a fault. I think that's true.
Hollywood's golden age wasn't all glitz and glamour. Not even close. Behind the silver screen, beyond the perfectly delivered lines and epic cinematic moments, there were tensions, rivalries, and secrets that the studios worked tirelessly to keep under wraps. And for decades, one of the most persistent whispers involved two of the industry's absolute titans, Gregory Peck and Charlton Heston. They were giants of the box office, but in real life, they were polar opposites. One was the steady moral compass of liberal Hollywood, the other, a conservative icon who would become the unforgettable face of the NRA. They were forced to share the screen in a film that became legendary. Their on-screen rivalry so intense that audiences couldn't help but wonder if it was real. For years, the public speculated, the tabloids hinted, and the industry whispered. Gregory Peck, a man known for his dignity and class, stayed famously private, and his silence only poured gasoline on the rumors of a bitter, silent feud. So what really happened between these two Hollywood legends? What did the noble Gregory Peck truly think of the formidable Charlton Heston? Tonight, we uncover the truth, and it's a truth that's more complex, more nuanced, and way more surprising than any rumor. This isn't just a story about a simple feud. It's a fascinating tale of professionalism, quiet respect, and a clash of ideas that defined an entire era. So stick around, as we reveal what happened when Gregory Peck finally broke his silence on Charlton Heston. To really get why this rumored feud was such a big deal, you first have to understand the men themselves, or at least, the towering public personas they represented. And few personas in Hollywood were as clearly defined, or as deeply respected, as that of Gregory Peck. From the moment he landed in Hollywood, Peck was just different. With a lanky, 6'3" frame, a face that looked like it was carved from granite, and a voice that radiated decency. He was never just a movie star. He was a symbol. Born in Loyola, California, Peck's childhood wasn't easy, but it forged in him a deep sense of empathy and a quiet, unshakable integrity. He was actually studying to be a doctor before the stage called his name, and after honing his craft in New York, he came back to California and quickly became a leading man of rare substance. His early roles set the stage for a career built on moral fiber. In The Keys of the Kingdom from 1944, he snagged his first Oscar nomination playing a self-sacrificing priest. It was a powerful debut that announced the arrival of a serious, thoughtful actor. But it was in 1947 that Peck truly cemented his legacy as a man willing to tackle society's darkest corners. He starred in Gentleman's Agreement, playing a journalist who pretends to be Jewish to expose the ugly, everyday reality of anti-Semitism in post-war America. This was a gutsy move. His own agent told him not to take the role, afraid it would torpedo his career. But Peck didn't care. He saw the film as a statement, a chance to use his fame to fight bigotry. The film was a huge success and became one of the works he remained proudest of his entire life. This commitment to social justice wasn't just an act. Peck was one of Hollywood's most prominent liberals. He was an early and vocal opponent of the House Un-American Activities Committee back in 1947, a stance that put him directly at odds with the conservative powers that be. He championed nuclear disarmament and was a staunch advocate for gun control, a position that would later put him in direct opposition to Charlton Heston. His activism was so well known that it landed him on President Richard Nixon's infamous enemies list, an honor he likely wore with pride. But it was one role that would forever fuse the man and the myth. Atticus Finch in 1962's To Kill a Mockingbird. His portrayal of the principled, small-town lawyer who defends a black man falsely accused of rape in the segregated South was more than a performance. It was the embodiment of everything Gregory Peck had come to represent. He won the Oscar for Best Actor, and the American Film Institute would later name Atticus Finch the greatest movie hero of all time. The book's author, Harper Lee, paid him the ultimate compliment, saying, Atticus Finch gave him the opportunity to play himself. This was Gregory Peck, Hollywood's conscience, a man of profound decency and quiet strength. He was the embodiment of thoughtful, compassionate liberalism, a star who believed his platform should be used to fight for a better world. And it was this towering figure of principle who would soon stand opposite a man representing a completely different universe of beliefs. If Gregory Peck was the quiet conscience of Hollywood, Charlton Heston was its epic, booming voice. Where Peck's heroism was found in quiet integrity, Heston's was forged in biblical epics and grand historical dramas. He wasn't just a man on screen, he was a monument. He could part the Red Sea, command Roman legions, and speak to God. From a mountaintop. Born, John Charles Carter in Illinois. Heston's journey to stardom was as determined as the characters he played. After serving in World War II, he pursued acting with a singular focus. His chiseled features and commanding presence made him a natural for the larger-than-life roles that would define his career. His breakout came in 1952 with *The Greatest Show on Earth asterisk, but it was his next collaboration with legendary director Cecil B. DeMille that made him a global icon. As Moses in 1956's The Ten Commandments, Heston was simply majestic. He followed that with his Oscar-winning turn in Ben-Hur, cementing his status as the king of the Hollywood epic. But here's where the story gets really fascinating. Behind the screen persona was a man of deeply held and evolving political convictions. In his early career, Heston was, by his own account, a Democrat. He was one of the few Hollywood stars who marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963, and was a vocal supporter of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In fact, after the assassinations of MLK and Robert F. Kennedy in 1968, he actually joined Gregory Peck and others in a public statement supporting President Johnson's Gun Control Act. But a major shift was coming. Heston grew disillusioned with the Democratic Party, especially after the anti-war candidacy of George McGovern in 1972. And he threw his support behind Republican Richard Nixon. This was the start of a profound political transformation. Heston would later famously explain it by saying, "I didn't change. The Democratic Party changed." By the 1980s, Heston had become a pillar of the conservative movement and a powerful voice for his friend, Ronald Reagan. His political journey culminated in 1998 when he was elected president of the National Rifle Association. It was here that Heston's public persona took on its final, and for many, most controversial form. He became the fierce, uncompromising champion of the Second Amendment. His speeches were legendary. At the 2000 NRA convention, in a moment that would be replayed endlessly, he held a replica flintlock rifle over his head and issued a direct challenge to Al Gore, declaring that his gun rights would only be taken from my cold, dead hands. It was pure Heston, dramatic, defiant, and unforgettable. He had transformed from Moses into a modern-day political warrior, a hero to millions of conservatives and a formidable adversary to liberals. This was the Charlton Heston set to coast, with Gregory Peck, not just a movie star, but a political force. Two men, two titans, each representing an opposing pole in the American cultural landscape. Hollywood and the world watched and waited to see what would happen when these two forces finally collided. To truly get the tension around casting Peck and Heston in The Big Country, we have to step back into the era. The late 1950s were a time of massive cultural and political turmoil in America, and Hollywood was right at the center of the storm. The glamour of the studio system hid a deep anxiety, a sense of a nation grappling with its identity. The Cold War was at its peak, casting a long shadow of paranoia over every part of American life. The battle between the U.S. and the Soviet Union wasn't just geopolitical, it was a cultural war, and Hollywood was a primary battlefield. The wounds of the Hollywood blacklist were still raw. The House Un-American Activities Committees, which hunt for communists in the movie industry, had destroyed careers, shattered friendships, and created a climate of fear. This environment forced people to choose sides. Gregory Peck had been an outspoken critic of the committee from day one, cementing his liberal credentials. It created a politically charged atmosphere where every script, every casting choice, could be scrutinized for hidden political meaning. At the same time, the civil rights movement was gaining unstoppable momentum. The landmark 1954 Brown v. Board of Education decision had ignited fierce resistance and forced the nation to confront its deep-seated racial injustice. While both Peck and Heston would find themselves on the side of civil rights in the coming years, the issue was incredibly divisive in the 50s. Into this volatile mix came the Western. By the 1950s, the genre had evolved from simple tales of cowboys into a powerful way to explore complex American myths and anxieties. Westerns became allegories for the Cold War, for conformity versus individualism, and for the violent tensions simmering just beneath the surface of American society. This was the world that awaited the production of The Big Country. It was a time when political labels mattered. A liberal like Peck and a budding conservative like Heston represented opposite ends of the spectrum. The idea of putting them into a film about a bitter feud wasn't just clever casting, it was a reflection of the deep. This scene became legendary. It cemented the public perception of a deep-seated rivalry between Peck and Heston, a perception that would linger for decades, all while the real drama on the set was happening somewhere else entirely. While audiences were mesmerized by the on-screen battle between Peck and Heston, assuming it was real, the truth was far more complicated. The set of The Big Country was a hotbed of tension, but the battle lines were not drawn between its two male stars. The real feud, the one that nearly derailed the whole production, was a clash of titans happening behind the camera, between star producer Gregory Peck and the notoriously difficult director, William Wyler. Peck and Wyler were old friends. They had worked together on the classic Roman Holiday and decided to partner up to produce The Big Country. It seemed like a perfect collaboration. But the pressures of a massive, big-budget production soon turned their friendship into a war zone. The problems started with the script. It was unfinished when shooting began, a logistical nightmare. Scenes were being rewritten on the fly, sometimes handed to the actors the morning they were supposed to be shot. Actress Jean Simmons later recalled the chaos, saying, "We'd have our lines learned, then receive a rewrite, stay up all night learning the new version, then receive yet another rewrite the following morning. It made the acting damned near impossible." As a producer, Peck felt the pressure of a ballooning budget and a story that wasn't working. On top of that was Wyler's infamous directing style. Nicknamed 40-Take Wyler, he was a relentless perfectionist who would shoot scenes over and over, often without telling his actors what he wanted, other than to make it better. While Heston seemed to take Wyler's demanding nature in stride, Peck, his friend and producing partner, found himself in an impossible position. He respected Wyler as a director, but, as a producer, he was watching the schedule and budget spiral out of control. The conflict hit its boiling point over a minor scene. Peck was unhappy with his performance in a close-up and, as both star and producer, he insisted on a reshoot. Wyler, asserting his authority as director, flatly refused. For Peck, this was a profound betrayal. Feeling totally dismissed, he did the unthinkable. He walked off the set of his own movie. He was eventually coaxed back, but the damage was done. By the end of the shoot, the two old friends weren't even speaking. Their falling out lasted for 3 years. This was the real feud on the set of The Big Country. It was a battle of creative control, financial pressure, and clashing egos. And ironically, while this genuine conflict was raging, the rumored animosity between Peck and Heston was just that, a rumor. Heston's own memoirs and accounts from others consistently described his relationship with Peck as completely professional and friendly. They were just two pros doing a job, while the real war was being waged between the director and his star. With the chaotic production finally over, The Big Country was released to great acclaim. The on-screen rivalry was a major talking point, and the rumors of a real-life feud began to harden into fact in the public mind. In the years that followed, as Heston's political voice grew more conservative and more prominent, the narrative of an ideological clash only intensified. He became the president of the NRA, while Peck remained a steadfast supporter of gun control. They were perfect foils, not just in a movie, but in the great American culture war. Through it all, Gregory Peck remained noticeably quiet about Charlton Heston. He never engaged with the rumors. He never issued a public statement. For a man who was so outspoken on political issues, his silence on this was deafening. And in that silence, speculation grew. Was the animosity so deep he couldn't even speak his name? Did he despise Heston's politics so much that he chose to erase their shared history? The truth, however, wasn't about hidden hatred. It was about the very character of Gregory Peck. Peck was a man of immense dignity and privacy. He would passionately advocate for his causes, but he rarely, if ever, engaged in public spats or personal attacks. He carried himself with an old-world sense of decorum. To dignify Hollywood gossip with a response would have been completely out of character for him. His silence wasn't a sign of contempt, it was a sign of his professionalism. He had worked with Heston on a film. They had done their jobs. The rest was just noise. In contrast, Heston was more open, writing about the film in his autobiography with clear respect for Peck, never mentioning any personal conflict. But without a word from Peck, the public was left with a myth that was just too perfect to question. The noble liberal and the conservative titan, forever locked in a battle of wills. It was a fantastic story. But it wasn't the true one. For decades, that silence allowed the rumors to define their story. But before we reveal what Gregory Peck really said about Charlton Heston, and the surprising truth behind their supposed rivalry, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. We're dedicated to uncovering the hidden histories and untold stories of Hollywood's golden age. And you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's get back to the moment the silence was finally broken. There was no dramatic press conference, no explosive tell-all interview. The breaking of the silence came just as you might expect from a man like Peck, quietly, thoughtfully, and in understated remarks made over the years, that, when pieced together, paint a clear and surprising picture. The first clues came from Charlton Heston himself. At a tribute to Gregory Peck at the AFI Life Achievement Award ceremony in 1989, Heston, by then a major political opponent, stood before the audience and spoke with genuine admiration. He said, "There are a lot of good actors in this town. There is none more gifted than he. The causes he has spoken for, on some of which we have disagreed, but he has spoken with eloquence, passion, and integrity that is undeniable, and I honor him for that." It was a remarkable statement. Heston didn't just praise Peck's acting. He acknowledged their political disagreements head-on, and then lauded Peck's integrity in fighting for his beliefs. It was a public testament to a relationship built on mutual respect. And what of Peck? In a rare interview where he was asked about his politically opposite colleague, his response finally put the rumors to rest. He didn't reveal a secret friendship or confess to a bitter rivalry. He acknowledged their differences mattered stating that he and Chuck, a familiar, friendly nickname, had certainly been on different sides of the fence. But then he delivered the crucial line, the one that revealed the true foundation of their relationship. We both loved movies. That was always our common ground. He then went a step further, echoing the exact sentiment Heston had expressed about him. Speaking of Heston's deeply held conservative beliefs, Peck said, "You may not agree with all of them. I certainly didn't. But you couldn't question his integrity. Let that sink in. For decades, the world had assumed these men were bitter rival. But here was Gregory Peck, the icon of Hollywood liberalism, using the exact same word to describe his conservative counterpart that Heston had used for him: integrity. This wasn't a confession of friendship, and it wasn't a dismissal of their profound political differences. It was a profound acknowledgement of professional and personal respect that went deeper than politics. Peck was saying that you could fundamentally disagree with someone's entire worldview and still recognize and honor their sincerity. That this was the truth, hiding in plain sight. The great, silent feud was a fiction. The reality was a story of two consummate professionals who found common ground in their craft and respected each other enough to see the person beyond the politics. The silence wasn't broken with a bang, but with a quiet, powerful testament to civility. The story of Gregory Peck and Charlton Heston is more than just a debunked Hollywood rumor. It's a powerful lesson for our own polarized times. It's a story about a forgotten form of civility, a testament to a time when it was possible to fiercely disagree with someone without dehumanizing them. After The Big Country, both men's careers continued to flourish on their own paths. Peck would win his Oscar for To Kill a Mockingbird and continued his quiet activism. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Lyndon B. Johnson back in 1969 for his humanitarian work. He remained, in the public eye, Atticus Finch personified. Heston, meanwhile, became an even more towering figure in both film and politics. His presidency of the NRA defined his legacy for a new generation, making him a hero to conservatives and a villain to liberals, and Heston, a testament to his influence on the other side of the aisle. Also received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, awarded to him by President George W. Bush in 2003. They lived their lives as ideological opposites. One, a champion of liberal causes and gun control. The other, a champion of conservative values and gun rights. They never reconciled their political beliefs because there was nothing to reconcile. They simply agreed to disagree, a concept that seems increasingly rare today. Their story is a powerful counter-narrative to our current culture of outrage. They worked together, created a classic piece of art, and maintained a professional and personal respect for one another for over 4 decades. All while standing on opposite sides of a vast political chasm. They could look past the labels of liberal and conservative and see the dedicated artist, the man of integrity, the legendary